Aston Martin Vantage gets a heavy refresh for the 2025 model year. And in this video, I'm going to cover the exterior, the interior, take it for a drive and see what it's like out on the road, as well as talking about the kind of fuel economy you can expect, and also the pricing and how it compares to the competition. And so as far as the 2025 Vantage, well, this thing is gorgeous. They did such a fantastic job on this redo for the Vantage. So it is heavily revised, and underneath the chassis is still, a little bit of carryover, and you can see the back end, has some carryover as well for sure, but the front end is completely new, gives you that new Aston Martin face that we're seeing across the lineup here, and especially on the Vantage. I mean, man, does this thing have presence. You have that wide open, gaping front grille there. You have these actually really large headlights on this small little vehicle, but they have all these beautiful details within them and just have this piercing look to them, and just, oh man, the nose, the way it juts out, and the way the front bumper is sculpted, it is beautiful. And really the biggest thing about this new Vantage is the width. I mean, it is so wide, and it got much wider than the pre-refresh version, the prior generation, and you can really tell that. I think the #1 styling theme for this vehicle is wide. Everything you look at is wide and spread out, and this thing has incredible presence. Actually, in pictures and video, it looks really good still, but whenever I first saw this in person, I was like, wow, like my jaw dropped. Like, this thing has presence for days. It has just an incredible stance to it here in person in 3 dimensions, and it is just absolutely stunning. Anyway, moving down to the sides here, we have these forged 21-inch wheels that also make quite a statement and are an extra $5,800. I also love this podium green paint. I'm a traditionalist, typically I'd go for a silver or British racing green maybe for an Aston Martin, but this podium green really has me rethinking my favorite colors here within Aston, because this color is gorgeous with the metallic flake, and especially here in the sunlight, it really pops, makes a statement, stands out, and I think it's worth every penny of that $9,700 price tag. And then I also love this hood. You have the venting in it, and you have the ridges to it, and just it's so low, so amazing. You also have these air vents here that are new in the front fender, and has the nice little Aston Martin script there built into it. And then the sides also, it's just incredible, again, between the much wider fenders, the much wider rear quarter panel area here, but also like these side mirrors, the way these things stick out. I mean, they come out so far, and you have almost a frameless mirror there too. It is gorgeous, and I don't think I've seen side mirrors this beautiful since the Pagani Huayra. I also love the side skirts here. They stick out so much. I think honestly it comes out about as far as the tray on an airplane seat. It's really wide. I absolutely love that. And then going out to the back there, again, that is familiar from the prior Vantage. Same taillights, which in this application are smoked for an extra $1,400. And the same kind of trunk lid, but again, because of those wider hips, it really has more presence there in the rear as well. I also love how the exhaust tips, jut out so much. You have that super aggressive rear diffuser that stands out, and I mean, there is not a bad angle on this thing. Every single place you look is another cool little detail and just more impressiveness, and 10 out of 10 home run as far as the styling goes for this refresh. The interior of the Aston Martin Vantage is very, very nice and gets a really nice improvement here for 2025 as well. So again, a lot of the basic stuff is the same. I think the seats are mostly the same, but basically everything else here is new. So first off though, sitting down in these seats, you have these really nice, very grippy seats with the Alcantara here. You can of course get regular leather or whatever you want. The sky's the limit with the Q division, customizing this for you if you'd like. But this one is, really cool with the Alcantara and the contrast stitching, the Aston Martin logo embroidered there. And they are also heated seats here as standard. Now you can get ventilated seats, I think, as well, but this one does not have it here with the Alcantara. And other things though with these seats are that you have adjustable bolstering and adjustable lumbar, and the bolstering gets nice and snug like you want for a sports car, and so far they're pretty comfortable seats. They're a tad bit on the firm side, but you'd expect that out of a sports car, and they've been very comfortable so far. I'll be living with this vehicle for a week, and I will let you know how they fare after a while. But moving on to the steering wheel here, it's a really nice thick beefy wheel, but still allows you to get a nice good 9.3 grip, nice little 10-2 notches as well. Some real nice materials on it here, a little bit of gloss black plastic, but not bad at all. And really the crowning thing are these massive paddle shifters here that are metal and feel fantastic and fall right at your fingertips there. Really love the way that feels. And your one little hint of the Mercedes switchgear that continues on here in these from that partnership is the windshield wiper and turn signal stock is Mercedes. Otherwise, everything in here is now, I think, completely Aston Martin. And so moving on to the gauges here, you have a 10.25 inch digital display here, and it has, you know, a couple different views. So you can have the 2 dials or just 1 dial in the middle and more info on the left and the right if you would like. But otherwise, just your basic stuff in the middle there. It is nice that it shows the navigation map, but I would like to see more of the telemetry here and have, like, you know, boost gauges and all that kind of stuff in there. And I don't see any way to configure that stuff. Maybe I'm just missing it, but you know, I wish there was a little bit more of the car enthusiast stuff in the middle there. But otherwise, still really nice gauges. They do change color whenever you go to the different drive modes as well. Moving over to the center of the dashboard here, you have this new Aston Martin infotainment system, which is entirely on their own now. They got rid of all the Mercedes stuff they used to have, and it's really nice and quick and responsive. It's a 10.25 inch display as well, and I love how it's set nice and low. It's even below the air vents here, and you know, it's functional and it's very easy to use, and it's, you know, really nice and easy to reach too. But you know, it's not the dominating factor on this interior here. You know, it's just there to serve its purpose, and it's nicely encased in this carbon fiber with a bunch of the trim options in here, by the way, total up to about $18,000 between the carbon fiber and the stitching and all that. But just a really nicely done screen though. It's nice and simple, just the few basic things you need there, and it's all, again, nice and quick and snappy. I love the telemetry page to see all that info here in the middle. But yeah, just really great. Also has wireless Apple CarPlay, and it's, you know, it's just so nice you have that here, and just a few shortcut buttons beneath this screen too. And then you have all these nice knurled metal knobs for, you know, your temperature adjustments, volume control, and this beautiful engine start button here in the middle, which is large and also doubles as your drive mode selector. And then this other little tiny notch here for changing your gear, and also a nice manual button there, nice and quick and easy to get to that. I love that. And also a few buttons here that kind of remind you of Mercedes in a way, but are, again, unique to Aston Martin here. But the same kind of idea of, you know, one button to go straight into your loud exhaust, one button to change the suspension setup if you want, and just tweak that one component. And it's very easy to decipher between the white, the yellow, and the red as far as the firmness level there. Quick shortcut buttons for 360 cameras and all that stuff, nice and easy. I like that we have some buttons here, not overboard, but just enough, and really, I think, a Goldilocks amount of buttons there. Now, as far as storage spaces here in the Aston, obviously not going to be the most practical vehicle. That's not what this is for. But, you know, in the doors here, you do have a nice long pocket there, and you will actually see kind of hidden behind the screen here your actual Qi wireless charging pad. For a second, I wasn't sure what that was, and then I figured it out, that is a nice place to hide your phone there and have it charged if you'd like. And you also have 2 cup holders, and then this center armrest, which is nice and softly padded with this beautiful leather. And you open that up, and you'll see something very shallow there. Again, enough space for maybe, you know, your phone once again, or a few small little knickknacks. My sunglasses do fit in there just barely, but, you know, not too much space there. Now, you do have behind the seats here, of course, since this is a 2-seater, you have that little parcel shelf there in a way. You can, you know, fit some things in there, and you know, another little one in the middle there. But, you know, again, it's not designed to be practical. So, but I think, you know, it is nice to have that. You also love how you have the hatchback versatility here. So moving on to that rear hatch, you know, opens up nice and wide. You know, it's a nice and fairly wide space, you know, pretty shallow, but, you know, for a vehicle like this, not bad. You do have that little divider there, and you'll also see that little bar that goes across, which is an extra thing for rigidity here that was an enhancement of the Vantage for 2025. But the moment you've all been waiting for, let's start it up and go for a drive. So the Aston Martin key is beautiful, has the logo there, has the logo on the sides. This is all metal and very heavy, by the way, too, and feels very expensive and very Aston Martin. And so a very special key. Although I do kind of miss, you know, you used to have to put the key in and push it in to actually start it. Now, of course, it's all just keyless, which is nice because you can leave it in your pocket, but I do kind of miss that very special startup. But I mean, still, again, this beautiful engine start button, you press that here, and it starts right up. All right, so setting off in the Aston Martin Vantage. So the first thing you notice about this vehicle, I think the first thing I noticed right away was the razor sharp throttle response. I mean, it is super touchy. Like the second you put a little bit of pressure on the gas, it immediately starts going pretty quickly. So this vehicle definitely feels like it wants to take off on you, and that is just adds to the drama and the fun of this vehicle. Another thing that I'm actually really appreciating is that you have vacuum assisted brakes. Brake booster is vacuum assisted here, and so that is very, very nice because it means you have really good feel from the brakes here. Other things though, visibility is actually really good for a vehicle like this where I'm sitting so low. The dashboard actually comes down pretty nice and low, and pretty thin A-pillars. And again, these mirrors off on the doors are really nicely done, and view out of the back is actually really good with that nice large glass for the rear hatch. Listen, it's just crackle and pop all day back there. I don't even have the sport exhaust on yet, but you just hear that the whole time. Oh, this is gonna be a fun one. So yeah, otherwise though, you know, I have everything just in the sport mode, which is actually the normal mode for this car, which is kind of fun. And so with the dampers in their softest setting, you know, it's a sports car, and it definitely might be a little bit stiffer than a 911 or something that might be a little more polished and a little, you know, more attuned to a daily driver. But it's been completely fine so far. Again, I'll live with this vehicle for a week and see what it's like after, you know, some more miles. But at first, you know, it doesn't seem to be bothering me so far. Also, steering is actually really nice. It's a little lighter than you might expect for something that's like a supercar, honestly, but you know, pretty quick steering. I think that was also one of the changes they did, was they, I think, made the steering a little quicker here. And yeah, I mean, it all just feels really good. It's just a natural, normal kind of weight, but it does feel like it wants to change direction pretty eagerly because it isn't overly heavy. Also, you know, just cruising along at, you know, low speeds here, it's actually pretty refined in here too. You know, it's a pretty windy day and you're not hearing a whole lot of the outside. It's, you know, very well insulated, feels luxurious. So if this is something you want to daily drive, you know, that is certainly, you know, something that I think is going to feel very appropriate in this vehicle as well. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up into the Sport Plus mode. There's also a track mode. I'm on public roads and it's still just in the low 40s here, so I'm not gonna get too crazy, but I'm just gonna put it in Sport Plus mode, leave it in automatic for now, and let's turn down onto this back road and see how it accelerates. Here we go. Wow, I heard a little like whine from the back end. Man, the roar from this thing. Ooh, it crackles and pops again. It's been a while since I've had a reaction like this. Man, this thing is fun. So we still have the AMG twin turbo V8 engine, but it is, you know, made by Aston Martin. It's got custom modifications for Aston's own specification here. So it has new heads, new cams, and bigger turbos now for 2025. It does a total of 656 horsepower, 590 pound-feet of torque, and it's 153 more horsepower than last year, by the way. Just wild. And gives you a 3.2 seconds 0 to 60 is what Car and Driver got. Aston claims 3.4 officially, and it'll go up to an 11.1 second quarter mile time at 133 miles per hour and a top speed of 202 miles per hour. And I think what I love about this vehicle the most when it's accelerating is the fact that you could feel a little bit of wheel spin and the car actually kind of holding itself back to try and put the power down. You can, of course, turn off traction control. There's 9 different traction control settings you can turn it to, and you know, that'll give you as much looseness as you want. I'm no Chris Harris, so again, especially on a cold day here, I'm just going to, you know, leave it in the regular mode here, you know, for the kind of driving we're going to be doing here today. But you know, it is nice that you have all that adjustability if you want it. But we're coming up some corners here that I always take, and let's see how the Vantage handles. So again, just on regular roads here, and I mean, this thing has got such high limits, I'm sure I'm not going to, you know, even have any kind of fuss from this car whatsoever. I mean, it really is so flat. It's point and shoot, and yeah, it's really grippy. We have a tiny bit of water here, so I'm going to be careful because this corner sometimes can provoke a little oversteer. Yeah, oh, I felt it was twitching. I could have definitely gotten more sideways there if I wasn't careful. Obviously, again, has all the traction control, stability control to keep things things in line. You also have a lot of grip to help keep things in line. So we have 275 wide tires in the front, 325s in the rear now to, again, try its best to put all that power to the ground. And so, I mean, they're also a pretty cool tire. It's a Michelin Pilot Sport S5, so the newest version of that, but it's also Aston Martin's unique blend that they developed for this vehicle in particular. And so it's going to give you, you know, again, just fantastic grip. And, you know, I mean, the PS tires are amazing that Michelin does. So, you know, a really fantastic choice there. And, you know, should give you tons and tons of grip. And I will continue to, you know, push it on some more back roads here in a couple of minutes. But, in the meantime, so yes, you have adaptive dampers. There's 3 modes there for them, and of course they can vary intelligently as well. And we also, to slow things down, have carbon ceramic brakes on this one. That is an option. They are $14,400 extra, and then to get them painted in yellow, that's an extra $1,900 on top of that. So, you know, very expensive for the carbon ceramics. Obviously, when you're dealing with this much power and performance, it never hurts to have carbon ceramics, but I will certainly say I'm sure regular Aston Martin Vantage brakes are going to be completely fine too. You know, carbon ceramics are more suited to track driving and things like that, you know, but I think I'm sure you could probably skip out on those if you are someone who's trying to save a few bucks with your configuration. But I mean, they do certainly look beautiful. They're massive, and obviously give you lots and lots of stopping power. And again, it's another area where I'm not going to even approach the limits of braking with this thing, but I mean, they are very, very strong. But man, it really pushes you in the back of your seat with the turbos. That boost just keeps going. And once you're at higher speeds, I think it continues to pull even harder because it knows it can, you know, safely put that power down even more. And it really does, you know, do a really good job of, again, just feeling so fast. And, you know, by the numbers, this isn't the fastest thing in its segment, but I don't really think the Aston is, you know, meant for people who want to, you know, race a spec sheet. If you do, you know, 911 Turbo S, things like that are going to, you know, be objectively better from a, you know, numbers standpoint in the straight line. But, I mean, you know, this is for the people who want the rear-wheel drive experience, who want the rawness, the extra involvement, and don't just want, you know, a simulator just taking them to an instant 0 to 60 time, you know, without any kind of drama. I'm not going to do any kind of launch control or anything, but I do want to try out manual mode here. So I'm in first gear. Here we go. Oh, there's some wheel spin. It's super snappy on the upshift. Downshifts are immediate too. Oh, and it feels so good to pull these paddles. So it's a ZF 8-speed automatic. Now it's a transaxle automatic, so a little different than the usual ZF 8-speed. Oh, and whenever you're in these higher gears too, and you just lean on the power of those lower RPMs. Oh, it is so lively though. I mean, I can just feel it, you know, ever so slightly shifting around. It just feels active, not in a shady way or a scary way, but it makes you feel alive, and it really makes you feel like you're in charge here. You're the one that's driving it. Obviously, again, you have the safety nets, you have all kinds of safety tech in addition to, you know, everything else, but it does, you know, let you know that it will bite back, and especially if you turn everything off, you're on your own. This car is a handful. I have no doubts about that. And yeah, it is such a fun handful though. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's definitely, it wants to kick out on me. Man, I would love to play around with this thing on track. It has to be phenomenal fun. But unfortunately, I am bound to just usual roads here this week. No track access for me. But man, this thing, even on regular roads, obviously, you know, it has the dilemma like any really high performance vehicle of just feeling like you can't fully stretch its legs. But again, because you get the little bit of wheel spin and you get the playfulness even at low speeds, it still makes me feel like I'm doing something, and that it isn't a complete bore like it is in so many other vehicles that are just, again, so fast, so capable, and so composed. Even some of the more exotic stuff, like McLaren Artura with its mid-engine setup, I reviewed one of those last year. Very, very fun. I'm not going to knock the Artura. It's a fantastic car as well. But, you know, the composure there and just the polish is very impressive. But, you know, this is a little bit more of a brawler. This is the one that's, you know, a little more scruffy, a little bit something you don't want to mess with, I guess. Man. This thing is fantastic. I've never actually driven a Vantage since the like 2007 that I did a long time ago, and I always wondered about these new Vantages, and you know, I don't know what they were like pre-refresh, but I gotta say that this one is fantastic. Driving through a tiny bit of water there again. We'll be judicious with our throttle. But honestly, you know, the Michelins do a really good job too of still maintaining grip even in the wet. But yeah, a little bit of water there. Oh yeah. Yeah, being very careful because this thing, I love how this thing dances around. And even you can just feel a hint of it. And even that hint is enough to put a smile on your face, make you giddy, and make you again feel like you are really in charge here. And the soundtrack the whole time is phenomenal, and it also feels so light too. I didn't mention curb weight. These weigh about 3,884 pounds, I believe, you know, again, not as light as some of, again, those mid-engine things or whatever, but it's so flat. Again, there is nothing about this vehicle that feels lazy or like anything's holding you back whatsoever, aside from maybe grip, but again, I think that adds to the fun. And oh man, yeah, fantastic on a quick little back road jaunt like that. And now I just put it back into the sport mode just to calm it all down, and then again, it all gets, you know, you still get that nice little burble, and it's obviously still sporty feeling, but you know, it gets a little less, you know, frantic, I suppose, as far as the drive modes goes. But so it does have a nice duality to it. And before I did my fast driving, you know, just taking this to the car wash and, you know, other quick little jaunts, you know, driving it slowly to preserve my reaction, you know, it is still just a really nice thing to, you know, just drive at a slow pace as well. Listen to this fantastic stereo, which I didn't even mention earlier. We have a 1,170 watt 15 speaker Bowers & Wilkins stereo. That's $10,000, by the way, in this thing. Very expensive, worth every penny, again, especially what's 10 grand to an Aston buyer, you know, and I think you should totally go for that. They're beautiful speakers, and it's also, I mean, especially for a small car like this, I haven't sampled everything in this segment, but this stereo is one of the best sounding stereos I've ever heard, and that includes some of the high-end, like regular luxury sedans and SUVs and stuff. I mean, so clear and crisp with the vocals. The instrumentals are punchy. I mean, it just, it all sounds very, very good. I mean, it's going to be a hard dilemma. Do you want to listen to this music? Do you want to listen to the music of the engine and the exhaust? You know, most of the time I'm going to be listening to this exhaust, but, you know, whenever you are stuck in traffic or something else where you can't really enjoy the exhaust note, it's really nice to have this fantastic stereo too. And now out on the highway here in the Vantage, it's you know, a pretty nice cruiser. Obviously you got some road noise here, giant tires will do that, but you know, it's a nice cruiser. You put it on the stereo and you know, you could just kind of cruise along here. I do have to say that, you know, while again the ride is still a little firm, it's really not bad so far. Again, for a sports car. Now, would I want to do 1,000 miles in this thing in one go? Probably not, but you know, for, you know, even longer highway jaunts, I think this is going to be completely fine. And I do also have the adaptive cruise control system on. Probably a silly test. I don't know who cares about this in an Aston, but just briefly I'll say that, you know, I have all the lane keep assist systems on, which this does have as standard, by the way. And you know, it's more of a corrective system, but it does aggressively nudge the wheel whenever it senses that I'm getting close to the line there. So it still is more of a corrective one. It's not going to try and be like some, you know, very active assist, you know, or trying to be some kind of hands-free thing. It's just supposed to make sure you stay within the lines. And for people, especially driving something expensive as this, you might appreciate that assistance on a daily basis. What I will say, though, is that I ended up turning off the lane keep assist because it seemed a little too aggressive, and especially when you're trying to do sporty driving, you know, it was, I think, going to be probably a little bit of an issue. So I did turn it off. Thankfully, there's a button to turn it off very quickly. You can customize the modes here. It's also giving me a speed limit warning. It, for some reason, thinks we've gone to a 35 mile per hour zone on this 55 mile per hour highway. We have not. So electrical stuff still, you know, at least the sensors here got confused by the speed limit. But I think it's just great that you can customize this stuff. The only thing I will say, lastly, about the assistance is that whenever I had it in that custom mode, I had to, every time I got into this vehicle, I had to go in and put in that custom setting in order to, you know, have it, you know, leave me alone, and you know, so it doesn't remember that between key cycles, unfortunately. But you know, just one extra button pressed here for your pre-launch sequence. And also, you know, as far as other safety stuff goes, it has everything as standard. So adaptive cruise control is standard, blind spot monitoring through cross traffic alert, that lane keeping assist, the 360 cameras, all of that stuff is standard. And even companies like Mercedes still charge you extra for stuff like that. And especially when you get to the exotic realm, most of them will, you know, definitely nickel and dime you for all that kind of stuff. And I kind of like that in the Aston it is just standard here, so you don't have to worry about ticking all the option boxes. And I feel like most of this tech is stuff that most of these buyers probably want, you know, and especially here in 2025, I think it's nice that we have this stuff just to have your back, you know, again, because it is a very expensive vehicle, and you want to have that automatic emergency braking, you know, work for you there if, you know, something does come up. And so I love that, you know, Aston's approach to the safety component here as well. And yeah, but just still a really nice cruiser out here on the highway. But anyway, thanks to Aston Martin, I will have this vehicle for an entire week, thankfully. So I'm going to drive all over the place here, and then I'll come back and give you guys my final real-world fuel economy for anyone who cares, as well as my thoughts on the pricing and how it compares to the competition, and also any other thoughts that I have after living with this vehicle for a week and seeing what it's like to have this as a very, very awesome and expensive daily driver. Alright, so I've been driving the Aston Martin Vantage for a week now, and man, what a week this has been. I am not going to want to give this one back. This is one of the coolest cars I've ever reviewed, hands down. I've driven a lot of expensive stuff, some stuff that's even way more expensive than this. I've driven faster vehicles, but, you know, an Aston Martin, there's nothing else like it. There really isn't. And I will admit, I'm a huge James Bond fan. I'm a big fan of Aston Martin. So full disclosure here, you know, I was personally very excited for this vehicle. But even, you know, I was giving some friends some rides and family members some rides, and especially like friends that are car enthusiasts were like, wow, like this thing actually is, you know, more impressive than even some of them were expecting. And, you know, I think that's kind of my consensus as well. You know, I feel like the Vantage has sometimes gotten a little bit of a, you know, bad rap for, oh, well, just go to Mercedes V8 and, you know, all this other stuff. And that doesn't do it justice. You know, again, the motor, like I said earlier, is unique and has, you know, the different turbos and all this other stuff. But there's just a specialness to this vehicle that's it really is impressive, and it also impressed everyone else just even outside of the vehicle. I mean, the amount of looks I got this week, I actually was kind of surprised. I thought a lot of people would just mistake this for a Mustang or something, but like, I think the extra presence of, you know, the wide fenders, the really eye-popping paint, how low this is. I mean, it looks exotic and special. They really nailed it with the styling, and so even regular passerbys, you know, are impressed by this thing. And I mean, the amount of kids as well that had their jaw drop, the amount of hilarious reactions I got from kids as I was driving by and stuff. You know, that's the kind of stuff that you only get with these truly special vehicles like this. No one's gawking at a 911, you know, but people are gawking at this. And I think that, you know, is a really valuable, you know, a desirable trait, to have something that, you know, you feel special in it, everyone else knows it's special, and there's no explanation needed. You know, it doesn't look like, you know, another Corvette or another 911. You know, it truly is just, again, it stands out from the pack, I think, a lot more than a lot of other stuff in this segment. And so, as far as, you know, the last couple of review things here to mention, first off is fuel economy. So, very few people care, but just quickly I'll say these are rated at 15 mpg in the city, 22 on the highway, and 18 combined. Honestly, not bad for something with this much performance, in my opinion. And in my week of driving here, which again, I was not taking it easy. I mean, I did do a little bit of errand running, but I was enjoying this car all week, and I'm still getting 14.6 mpg. And honestly, I'm impressed with that, because again, it's rated at 15 in the city. I thought for sure, like, there's no way, you know, I'll probably get 13 or 12. Again, it's not a big deal. You're not worried about fuel costs if you're, in this tax bracket, but I'm just impressed with the efficiency here, and I think, it could be a pretty nice, highway cruiser as well if you are, going for a long range kind of drive, because it does seem to actually be pretty decent on gas, all things considered. There were two minor little complaints that I have with this vehicle. The first is that, whenever the rear hatch is wet, if it's a rainy day or out of the car wash, things like that, that hatch, the way it's cut, I did have it drip in on me into the trunk area, and having your possessions get wet, especially if, I'm assuming your possessions are quite expensive, if you have fancy luggage in the back of one of these things or something, it's just a part of the design, and I think most people will be fine with that. But just know, I just was like, oh man, I don't really love getting water into this trunk area just by opening the hatch. So that's the first thing. The second and final thing here is just that the brakes squeak because they're carbon ceramics. I personally, would just skip the carbon ceramics unless you plan to do a bunch of track driving. I'm sure regular Vantage brakes are completely sufficient for this vehicle. Obviously, having firmer brakes, the better. If you are enjoying this vehicle like it's meant to be enjoyed, it never hurts to have extra braking power. But I didn't love squeaking around. That was the one thing it did detract from the cool factor ever so slightly. So I would just skip that. And again, it's also very expensive at $14,400. I think that's an easy one to nix there. Oh, this thing. Man, this thing is amazing. Anyway. So yeah, and then the final thing to mention very briefly is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. And this isn't something that I'm going to discuss as far as values and what's the best bang for your buck. It's an Aston Martin. There's only one Aston Martin. If you want to have the best performing vehicle in a straight line, sure, 911 turbo is going to give you better acceleration. And again, do it without any of the cool factor of the Aston, in my opinion, less of the drama. But you can get a 911 turbo for the same kind of money. Obviously, they're very impressive. I've never reviewed one. I'm not knocking the 911 turbo, but just to me, it's an easy pick. I'd go for the Aston all day, every day, no question about it. 911 GT3 is a little more special. It has that 9,000 RPM naturally aspirated engine, but it is down on power, and it still is just a 911. And it is still going to be a magical experience, I'm sure. I've not driven any of the new GT3s either, so I'm not going to knock that car either. And from a driver standpoint, it is probably going to be sharper. It's probably going to feel a little lighter and just be, more of a scalpel than this is, versus this being a little wilder and rowdier. It just comes down to your personality. Do you want do you want this rowdiness, or do you want to just have the precision? I mean, that car still can get plenty wild, I'm sure, but not front engine rear drive wild like this does. But they are, again, similar money, so it comes down to your personal preference. I will also say, if you are someone who's, a value shopper, if you are kind of struggling to justify going up to something that's expensive, I do have to say I had a ton of fun in the Corvette C06 last year. That thing for, about half the price or so gives you this screaming, naturally aspirated flat plane crank engine. It sounds like better than a Ferrari 458, from 10 years ago. And, fantastic handling, phenomenal driving vehicle. I have no complaints with Z06, and that is, again, like half the price of this one as tested. But a lot of people, it's just a Corvette. And yes, it's an amazing Corvette, but it's just a Corvette. It's not as special as this, not even close. It's got a special engine, but, the vehicle itself is just still a Corvette. And for some people, whether it's just the brand prestige or just, the specialness, this is just still in a whole different ballpark as far as that specialness goes, in my opinion. We also even have 01, which is going to come in even under this as far as starting prices goes, and give you over 1,000 horsepower. So again, there's a lot of value there with the Corvettes. If having a Corvette is good enough for you, then I think, again, they're better values, obviously, from a performance standpoint, and are very special, and certainly worth considering, again, especially if this might be a little bit of a stretch for you to go up to something that's expensive. And then the last one, again, you can save a few bucks. You can get, an AMG GT Coupe, which again does have, a similar engine, but still not the same. But that is, going to be, man, not as extreme as this. And I just love the way Aston tuned this, just all the crackling, the popping, and just, the nice short wheelbase of this thing. And I don't know, it's just, to me, I think it's worth the extra money for this over the AMG GT. If you're, again, already spending big money on these kinds of things, you know, what's another 50 grand, you know? Like, I think it's worth, you know, the premium for the Aston, because again, it's the insane specialness of this over just another Mercedes. It's a nice Mercedes, but certainly doesn't stand out in the looks department as much as this does. Certainly is not going to be turning heads like an Aston Martin does. If I had this kind of money to spend, this would definitely be my pick out of all the stuff that I mentioned here. You know, if I had the disposable cash to go for something at this price point, again, I'd come in around $250 or so, you know, skipping the carbon ceramics. These do start at $194,500. And like I said, this one is $264,000 as tested. Yeah, it's absolutely would be the one I would pick. And so yes, that's all of my thoughts here on the Aston. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks once again to Aston Martin for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Yeah, thank you all very much for watching, and I will leave you with an acceleration. One last time, here we go. Oh, I love it, I love it, I love it. What a car.